So in the last YouTube clip there, I was talking about creating a physical prototype to examine your core mechanics. Create a playable prototype using pen and paper for your core mechanics. Do they work? Are they broken? Why are they broken? Can one of these core mechanics lead into another core mechanic? And is it compelling to the player? Keep them as simple as possible and try not to add any more rules. It's very easy to add feature creep, which is where you just start adding and adding and adding more stuff to it. You get a new idea, oh, we'll put that in, we'll put that in, we'll put that in. At this point, you want to create it as simple as possible, just on these, what are the very basic mechanics. That's the foundation stage. The structure stage, we're starting to build out from there then. We have the core mechanics, they work, it's interesting, it's compelling. You flesh out the mechanics to create interesting gameplay. You might add new mechanics to add additional gameplay. For instance, in Monopoly, you might add the chance cards, or in Mario, you have the core mechanics, which is running around, jumping. Now you add a mushroom, now you add an enemy. You're just fleshing it out at this stage. The formal details are rules and procedures to make a prototype a fully functional game. You've prototyped each stage, all the time in this, you're always playtesting, 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 iterative design. Is it working? Is it not working? Is the player interaction structure the best choice? Are there rules and procedures you want to add which are not part of the core mechanic? This is the place you start implementing them, expanding again. Because you know the core mechanics work, anything else you add, you're adding them singly one by one. So they're already isolated. You can check them one by one. Is this working? Does this add to the game? If it doesn't, we'll take it out, or we'll tweak it, or we'll adjust it. And then the final stage, this is refinement. Is it compelling? Do players enjoy playing it? If they don't, why not? Which mechanic can I tweak to make it more compelling or interesting, or change or swap out? Again, design, test, analyze, repeat. So conclusion of the physical prototype, which is so important in the design process. It's a critical step in the design of your original game concept. It'll save your team a tremendous amount of time because everyone will have a clear understanding of the game you're making. In addition, a physical prototype will enable you to focus your creative energies on the game mechanics without becoming distracted by the production and programming process. And most importantly, making a prototype gives you the freedom to experiment, and through experimentation comes innovation. So if you're making a digital game, the next step in the game design workflow is to create a digital prototype. This step isn't needed if you're creating a board game, but if you are going digital, this is a vital part of it. There's things that you can prototype, do physical prototypes for a lot of a digital game, but there's certain elements that you're going to have to test in the digital world. You're going to have to create a version on whatever platform you are intending your game to be for. The physical prototype helps formalize and test your game mechanics, and the digital prototype allows you to test the essence of your game in its intended format. Things that you will test at this point include the core systems. Do they work as you intended them in the digital world? The game logic, special physics. For instance, something like Angry Birds, you'd have certain things that defy physics, or physics doesn't work quite in the realistic world. You'll have to test these and make sure they work and they create compelling gameplay. The environments and the levels, just a very basic version of them, just a mock-up of them that you can run through to see if things work. It wouldn't be full of all the fancy graphics and audio effects at this point, just testing whether it works on the level that you want it to. The controls is another important one. Does the control system work how you want it? Is it intuitive to the player? Does it work on the platform that you're creating it for? Another good use of a digital prototype, if you are a designer and you're creating for a digital platform and you are employing, say, programmers or graphical artists, you get them to do up a prototype of a bit of your game, a core mechanic that you want to work. It's a great way of testing whether they're up to the task. Get them just to create that bit rather than signing them on for a whole project, and then down the project you're realizing that they don't have the technical skills that they need to complete your project. So a couple of the areas of investigation that are useful in a digital prototype include the game mechanics. Use the same method you used for your physical prototype. You start with your core mechanics, you test those, you use whatever game engine or however you're building it. You just focus on those core mechanics, and then you build a structure. Once they're working as you want them to work, you add in the other mechanics that you've prototyped in the physical prototype and start adding those in to see if everything works like you want it to as far as the mechanics are concerned. The aesthetics, although this is a prototype and you really shouldn't be considering too much at this point about how the end product is going to look and how the graphics going to look and how the audio is going to fit in. It's sometimes very useful. For instance, if you have animations, an example of this will be, say, if you're creating a digital, one of these combat games where everything is very much timed on the animation, how long the animation takes to hit the other character, this sort of thing. You'd start putting in real basic versions of those animations. The user interface as well is important at this point. You want to create something that when it comes to playtesting, somebody can play through and they're not going to get stuck at any point. So how the user interface is sort of the 2D overlay. A digital game, it'd have your score, it'd have, when you press the pause, you can go back to the main menu, you can restart the level, all these things. Do the buttons work? Do they take the player where they want to take the player? Do they take them in the minimal amount of clicks possible to get to where they want to go? Can they always find where they want to go? This is the sort of thing you'd be prototyping now. You'd just be prototyping, you just have little blocks that you click on to go backwards and forwards just to see if it works. The technology, whatever your platform is your game going to run on it? If you're creating a game for, say, a PlayStation 4 or a high-end PC, this isn't going to work on a mobile phone simply because they have way less processing power and graphics capabilities. So at this point, you'd want to be testing your game on your chosen platform. Does your control system work? A mobile phone, again, there's no joystick. You're relying on the touch controllers, which you can get very unique games that are designed around this. Again, I'm going to go back to Angry Birds. That works because of the touch controllers, or Flappy Birds even, if you remember that. That was massive for a couple of months there. Really simple, just a one-touch game. We really took advantage of the control system available on a mobile phone, which is basically a tap screen. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you'd have, if you're creating a game for a PC, you'd be using it with a mouse and a keyboard. Is it intuitive to using a mouse and a keyboard for your game? These are things you'd be testing out at the prototype stage, because if you get too far down the line, this isn't something you can do in the design document either. You can explain it in the design document, but the only way you can really do this is by creating a prototype of it. Kinesthetics. Kinesthetics is the game feel. Does it feel good to play? Is it, again, intuitive? I always go back to Mario because it's a fantastic example of this. When you play that, everything is just so intuitive. When you hit the jump button, it's a perfect jump, and you press it longer, it does the exact thing that you want it to. How does your game feel? That's a very important part of it. Does the player enjoy it, and do they have to put a lot of effort into playing it, or is it feels like it's just simple to play? Again, back to the intuitive controls there. Does your control system work on your chosen platform? I've been talking a lot about playtesting throughout this. It's a vital part of the iterative design process. Right from the brainstorming session onwards, you're continuously playtesting your game through the physical prototype, the digital prototype. There's a few different versions of testing that will happen during the process of your game. There is when you're playing the game and you're talking about the features, just you on your own or you and the design team. That's the internal design review. At the end, your quality assurance team will run through the game, make sure it's working exactly as it should. They will play it and play it and play it over and over again to check for bugs. That's the quality assurance testing. The big games will have focus testing, where the marketing team come in and they check it out with focus groups, see if it appeals to the target audience, seeing if basically whether they would buy it or not. And usability testing is checking where the player's looking when they play the game. Have you got the position of the icons right with where they will be looking during the playthrough? Playtesting is performed by the designers to gain insight into whether or not the game is achieving your player experience goals. We're always looking at that aesthetic of the MDA framework. Is your player getting out of it the aesthetic that you want them to get out of it? You gain useful feedback from players to improve the overall experience of the game. And is your game internally complete? Is it balanced? And is it fun to play? There's going to be various different playtesting groups that you have. The first one is when you're testing the game as you're making it. Here, you're just checking if anything's broken, seeing if you can play through it. You're not the best person to playtest your game because you're invested in it. You know how it works. It's only when you get onto the other testing with other people that you really get some valuable insight into how they're going to play your game. Playtesting with confidence, people you know, friends and colleagues. This is to check whether they can play through the entire thing. But again, they might be slightly biased. They might be, if you're friends, are they giving you a genuinely unbiased opinion? So then you'd play tests with people you don't know. This is where you're going to get the unbiased opinion, and you're going to see whether they can play through the whole game. And then play test with your target audience. Get a group of people who you're aiming this game at. The main question you're going to be asking there is it something that they enjoy? Is it something that they would buy? Some questions to ask when you are doing your playtest. After you maybe have a 10-20 minute playtest session with somebody. Afterwards, you want to get some feedback off them so you can build some data and adjust your game accordingly. What are the thoughts on the game? Were you able to learn how to play it quickly? Do they know the objective of the game? Is that clear to them? How do they describe the game to someone who's never played it? Now that they've played the game, is there any information which will be useful to them before they started it? Is there anything that you don't like the game? If so, what? And was anything confusing? Were they able to play it through? Were the rules clear to them? Functionality, completeness, and balance. This is what you're really looking for to get from your play testing. Can somebody who knows nothing about the game sit down and play it? Can they follow the rules and complete the game? Can they play it through without any help from you? Because if they're buying it from you, or if they're playing it as a board game, you're not going to be there to show them how to play it. Is it clear what they have to do? Can they complete the game? Is it internally complete? Test every possible permutation under all conditions. Does everything work in the game that you want to work? For a board game, are there gaps in the rules? If there's gaps in the rules, then players will interpret them differently. If it's not clear how they are supposed to do something, they might have difficulty with this. In digital games, loopholes, dead ends, or complete breakdowns. A loophole is a flaw in the system that a user can exploit, and it can ruin the experience for everyone. So you need to eliminate those loopholes, but you also need to allow the player the potential for emergent play, which is where they come up with new ways of playing the game that they make up on themselves. Is it balanced? We'll go back to the theory of flow there. Is your game balanced? Can the player get through? Is the difficulty where it needs to be? It's not too easy, it's not too difficult, and it keeps the player engaged. So the next step after you've got to this stage, you've tested and tested, play tested, gone through all the iterative design, is to create the game design document. But by doing all this testing before you create your game design document, it really should write itself. You have such a good idea of how your game works, what the core mechanics are. You've fleshed it all out during the prototyping stage. Rather than coming up with an idea and diving straight into making the game, which you're going to have loads of problems if you do that, or coming up with the idea and then creating a design document without actually testing any of it. You know, you go through all the trouble of creating this document, and then you start your design, you start your actual development, and you realise there's things in it which aren't working. by doing all this, we can now create a really good design document, which is the next lecture.